Well, I'm delighted to be able to join you tonight, and I do wish that I was there in person. As you may know, I've been covering some of the developments in healthcare here in the United States. But as you know, in this room, that some of our greatest challenges in health lie in many places around the world. I care so deeply about the same things that you all care about. And one cannot help but listen to the stories of impact that an organization like ECPAC has made, some of the stories that I have seen firsthand. And you cannot help but be so thankful that an organization like this exists in the world at all. Stephen, I want to thank you so much for having me. I want to thank everyone at the Hilton organization. Everyone in the world knows the name Hilton, specifically Conrad Hilton, because we see the hotels everywhere in the world. I mean, he's well known for building this international hotel empire. Even the hotel that you're in tonight, the Waldorf Astoria, is part of that legacy. But tonight I'm honored to be here because of another legacy, a more philanthropic legacy, one that is carried on by Steve and other members of the Hilton family. So I want to thank you and encourage you all to give a round of applause to all the Hiltons. You know, Conrad Hilton, by all accounts, had this genuine concern for people who were suffering, and in 1944 he established the Conrad Hilton Foundation. When he passed away in 1979, he left virtually his entire estate to the foundation and told his directors that he wanted to help the most disadvantaged and vulnerable people throughout the world without regard for religion, ethnicity, or country. It is an amazing thing. I mean, just think about that. It's brought all of us together tonight. And I'm honored to be in a room where people have done more than simply watching these problems from afar. Stepping off the sidelines, many of you have rolled up your sleeves, tried to accomplish something where nothing previously existed, and in the process you have provided something very important: hope. I'm thrilled to be here because in this room you've seen, many of you, the first-hand global health challenges that exist. But you've also seen the barriers that were previously thought to be insurmountable slowly begin to crumble. It's inspiring stuff, and I'm humbled to be able to share some of what I've seen with you as well. You know, I'll say that there's this bond that links together people who've been in the trenches, and I'm delighted to have that bond with many of you. Someone once said to me that with knowledge comes responsibility. Now that you have seen, you must act. And it is that spirit that I come to you tonight. My life is in part doctor, in part global reporter. As a neurosurgeon, I spent a great deal of my life dedicated to the immediate first-hand care of others, removing brain tumors, clipping aneurysms, fusing broken spines, much of it in quiet operating rooms, zoomed into view under the incredible magnification of a microscope. But a few years ago, one day, I figuratively turned that microscope around, and suddenly it became a telescope to see the whole world. And while there's tremendous beauty and tremendous joy out there, that telescope also magnified many of the world's health problems. I saw something, and I felt I must act. When I started medical school more than 2 decades ago, I had no idea that I'd ever be invited to come address an esteemed audience like this. I had no idea that I'd be doing many of the things that I'm now doing. I didn't know that I'd be fired upon in Iraq and Afghanistan and Lebanon. I didn't know that I'd parachute into the middle of a tsunami, be embedded in hospitals with no power, no food, no way out. I could not have known that I'd be on that last plane to land on a shattered runway in Port-au-Prince, Haiti after the earthquake. I've now traveled to every continent on the planet, nearly 100 countries, all of them very far from my hometown in rural Michigan. I had the dubious honor of being the most traveled person in all of CNN last year. And a reminder that CNN is an international news network. I've learned a lot of things along the way. Gunfire is not nearly as dramatic in real life as Hollywood makes it out to be. First time someone took a shot at me, I didn't even know what it was. I've learned how to negotiate my way out of danger, try and get the story that matters, and come home safely. I've learned that my wife, who not only allows me to go on these trips to these hot spots on the planet, but supports me and encourages me, is literally a 1 in a billion kind of gal. She would agree with that, because there aren't many who can put up with me. Sometimes she seems a little too enthusiastic about seeing me off to another war zone. I've also learned something else over these past few years, something that many of the people in this room definitely know and have lived, and that is this: hopes, dreams, and aspirations, they are evenly distributed throughout the world, whereas opportunities, working systems, and justice are not. How else can you explain a child diligently doing her homework in a Pakistan refugee camp when 1/5 of her homeland is underwater? How else can you explain double amputees dancing in the sunlight to music after the earthquake in Haiti? How can you explain soldiers going back in deployment after deployment, some of them my close friends, after they saw so many awful sights and had so many terrible experiences. It's perhaps the most important thing that I've learned, and it's one of the things I'm reminded of every time I sprint into a natural disaster or a war zone: hopes, dreams, and aspirations. It's informed the work that I do at home. It's informed the work that I do around the world. My wife and I, above all else, we want a better life for our children. That's what you want as well: a better life, a better world, a higher purpose, and I do not think this is out of our reach. I've come to believe that people are innately compassionate. I believe that. When people see something tragic, most people want to help. They want to jump right in. I call it this venting of compassion. So many of the stories you see on television, but so many are ones that we never get to share. I remember after the tsunami, for example, we'd been traveling for days, living out of our car, hardly saw anyone, and we were doing live shots. And I'll tell you the story quickly about this family that I saw in Portugal. They were living in this home that had been sort of ravaged by the tsunami, and I remember that the fact that they were living there at all was quite remarkable. And we were doing this live shot, and you got people sort of walking around trying to set up things, and you saw this family sort of step up, and I remember the mom sort of straightening out the boy's hair, and I thought to myself, please don't worry about us. It kind of broke your heart that they were concerned and worried what we might think. And I remember sort of at the end of this live shot, the boy came over to me and he handed me a package of crackers. This family didn't have anything at all. They had lost everything in that tsunami wave which had come in and destroyed their entire village, and yet they wanted to hand me this package of crackers. The mother gave me the sign of, "You should eat. You must be hungry." I'm curious, how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel more compassionate? Does it stir up something inside of you? Does it make you feel compelled to act in some way? I believe people are inherently compassionate. In fact, I would say that many people believe that human beings are hardwired to be altruistic. Human beings hardwired to be altruistic. As you know, as a neurosurgeon and a journalist, I look into studies like this all the time, and I found a recent one so interesting. Scientists at the NIH scanned people's brains as they were presented with different scenarios. In both scenarios, they were given $100,000. One group was told, you get to spend the money however you want it. The other group was told they had to give it away and imagine people's lives and imagine their faces as they received that money. And what they found was in the people who gave away that money, the same pleasure areas of the brain lit up that are associated with good food and good drink and some of the most basic pleasures. It feels good to be altruistic, and I believe we're hardwired to be so. As a global health reporter, part of my job is to translate some of the most difficult issues for our domestic viewers here in the United States. And translating complicated issues, well, truth of the matter, doctors are not always good at this. In fact, I remember when I was a newly minted neurosurgeon several years ago, I was doing a fellowship, and one night this woman came in. She had been jumping on a trampoline with her kids, and she fell off the trampoline and felt a pop in her neck. And she decided to come in and have it checked, and I was the neurosurgeon on call. I looked at her neck, and we got a scan, and sure enough, she had a broken bone in her neck. So we decided to put this device that you may have seen. It's called a halo around her head and then onto her chest, this halo device. Talked her through it. She did great, no problems. I remember I went out to talk to the family a little while later, her husband and her kids, her young kids, and I was telling the husband, I said, look, here's what we did. We put this halo device on. Everything went super well, and there was no problem. She's going to need to wear it for a couple of months. And the husband, the entire time I'm talking, he was just very earnest, looking at me in a very earnest way. And finally, when I was done, he said, yeah, but doctor, have you ever done this before? I couldn't resist. I said, well, no, but I did stay on a Holiday Inn Express last night. Well, apparently he had never seen that commercial. So my first dab at sort of medical communication sort of ended with a thud. Am I even allowed to tell that joke in the Waldorf Astoria? The Hilton family? You'll have to forgive me. I have found when it comes to providing hope, individuals sometimes aren't quite sure what to do. They want to wait for big sea changes, not realizing that small ones will do. I remember I was walking along this place in the Congo once, and this guide that had been with us kept telling me this is a very miserable place. And I remember asking him, stopping and saying, what do you mean by that? What does it mean that this is such a miserable place? And he said it is so miserable that many of these children all around us, they smile all the time and they have never seen a smile returned. And I looked at these children and realized it was true. These faces staring back at me, and of course I thought of my own children who constantly shriek with laughter and they giggle with delight, and I did understand his definition of misery. But I made it a point to smile at every child I saw for the rest of my trip. And slowly, many of those smiles started getting returned. You know, we wait long, too long, I think, for big ideas, grand sweeping ideas, when again, sometimes the small ones will do. As far as I can tell, Conrad Hilton wanted to level the playing field when it came to many of these issues. He wanted to level the playing field when it came to hopes, dreams, and aspirations. And that's especially true when it comes to the Hilton Humanitarian Prize. It was founded back in 1996. Its purpose to recognize organizations throughout the world that are doing some extraordinary work, oftentimes in very dangerous situations and in great hardship, to alleviate the suffering of the most vulnerable among us. And when I look into the eyes of many of these children that you've seen tonight, it's not that I see my own children. That's almost missing the point. I see them as my children. And I encourage you all to see them that way as well and to tell them that we will take care of you. Conrad Hilton could not have known it at the time, but he has provided hope to countless people he never met, providing hope. There are fewer, more valuable commodities than this, but sometimes we forget that. Moving too fast, forgetting the faces behind the numbers, losing sight of our truest and best intentions, our better angels. I believe people want to help, but sometimes cynicism replaces compassion, sometimes uncertainty replaces action, sometimes we forget that it can be as simple as a smile. But not tonight, not at this time, not in this room. Now that you have seen, you must act. Thank you so much for having me.